Hello, and welcome to the first stop on our tour of Yi preparation station. This very brief stop is intended to get you outfitted with the tools you need to start building web applications with the Yi framework. We're going to be installing Yi, and we'll create a new skeleton web application. We're assuming that you already have PHP 5.1.0 or above installed and configured on your server, and that you have a web application server that's capable of supporting PHP 5.1.0 and above. We're using the Apache web server with a vhost configuration that has a directory called webroot as our web accessible directory, and localhost is being used as the server name. So in other words, if we open up a browser and type in localhost, it will access the files and folders located in webroot. The very first thing we need to do is download the framework. Though there's not much to demonstrate here, we'll show you anyway. Open up a browser, navigate to yiframework.com, click on Downloads, and choose the appropriate version for your needs. If you're just getting started with the Yi framework, which I assume you are by watching this video, the latest stable version is probably the best choice. At the time of this recording, it's 1.1.5. As you can see, the download happened very quickly, as the framework has a fairly small footprint. Now we're on to installation. There is very little to installing the framework. We just unpack our downloaded files into our web accessible directory, in our case webroot, and then we can use the built-in requirements checker to ensure our PHP configuration meets the minimum requirements of Yi. Let's go ahead and take a look at this in action. We've copied our downloaded files into our webroot directory. Since the downloaded folder is named according to the specific version and SVN revision number, we renamed the folder to yiroot to keep things short and simple. This is optional, and you can name it anything you like. If we take a look under that folder, we see the entire contents of the 1.1.5 distribution. We see a demos folder, which includes some very useful examples. The framework folder, which contains all of the core Yi framework files. And a requirements folder that houses the requirements checker application, which we'll use now to check that our configuration meets Yi's minimal requirements. So open up your browser and navigate to localhost/yiroot/requirements. This will bring up Yi's requirements checker. The minimum requirements are identified as those rows with Yi framework in the required by column. As long as all of these are in a passed result status, then your configuration meets the minimum requirements of Yi. A quick note on the installation that we just performed. The Yi framework files actually do not need to all live under the web accessible directory. We initially placed them here for ease of using the requirements checker. You only actually need your index.php entry script under the webroot, and all the other framework files and application files can live elsewhere, which will help minimize access and maximize security. Now that our framework files are installed, we can move on to something more fun. We'll create a basic skeleton web application using a simple console command that is packaged with Yi. Doing so is simple. We'll just navigate to where we want our new application to be created and execute the command. Let's see this in action. We're going to be creating a new application called Demo in our webroot directory. We do this by executing the yiic command. It's found in yiroot framework yiic, followed by the web app command and then the name of the application we're creating, in our case demo. It'll prompt us if we're sure, and we'll type in yes. And presto, we have a new working web application. Let's actually take a closer look at what we have. Our newly created demo application has many folders and files within. What has been generated is the recommended structure for a new Yi web application that will allow you to quickly and easily take advantage of all of Yi's sensible defaults. This allows you to get up and running quickly with minimal configuration. There's an assets folder where your web published resource files will reside, a CSS folder for your CSS files, an images folder for your images files, a themes folder to house your application themes, and a protected folder, which is where the bulk of your custom application code files reside. If we take a peek in this folder, we see several subdirectories and files. A config folder that holds your application-specific configuration files. This is where you'll be configuring application-wide settings and components, like the database connection URL routing strategies, caching strategies, and many other settings that affect the entire application as a whole. As you already know, Yi is an MVC-style framework and has an application structure to separately house the PHP files that correspond to your models, views, and controllers. Not surprisingly, the corresponding folders are appropriately named Controllers, Models, and Views. All of these auto-generated files actually comprise a working web application, so let's take a look. If we open up our browser and go to localhost demo, we'll see a basic web application with 4 high-level menu items, or pages. There's a home page, some home page content. There's an About page that demonstrates static content page in Yi. A Contact Us page, which is a great demonstration and example of the use of forms in Yi. This is a good simple example of form field input and form field validation in Yi. We notice the little red asterisks indicate required fields, so if we attempt to submit the form without these fields, we'll get form field validation errors displayed. Here we see a nice summary listing of all of the fields that were in error, as well as each individual field highlighted to indicate which ones were in error. And if your environment has the GD2 graphics library enabled, which ours does, you will also be presented with a CAPTCHA input form field. The last page is a login page, which gives us a fully working example of authentication in Yi, so complete with form field validation, such that if we try to enter no username and password, we'll get validation errors. We can successfully log in using either demo or admin. Doing so will store relevant information server-side in a PHP session, and you will remain logged in for the duration of the session. Once logged in, we see our high-level menu item change to log out followed by the name. That indicates that we're logged in. So we'll log back out again and log back in using demo, this time checking the Remember Me Next Time feature. This will extend the session memory duration by using a browser cookie so that we can remain logged in upon returning to the site even if the browser has been closed between visits. So we'll give this a try by closing out our browser, re-navigating to the demo application, and notice that we are indeed still logged in. It's pretty amazing that so much has been accomplished by executing a single console command. This concludes our first stop on our Yi tour, where we've gotten the framework installed and a basic web application up and running in no time. We hope you are enjoying the tour so far and will continue along with us in this multi-part series of exploring the Yi framework.